There was a chap on there to me earlier today, and he asked me some questions in relation to a retail unit that he's looking at. And I've been in retailing, or was in retailing, practically all my life. So what I know and what I believe other people know are probably two completely different things. In other words, I assume people know certain things about shop units and leaseholds and freeholds and so on, when in fact that mightn't be true and mightn't be fair. So in this video I want to just have a look at or discuss something that came up in the course of the conversation this morning. This chap is not from Ireland, he's from outside Ireland. He's a professional, and he was looking at a shop unit in a particular part of the country. And let's just say, for the sake of this video, that the price of the shop unit was 100,000. This chap wasn't actually sure whether it was a freehold unit or a leasehold unit or what the story was. Now, the estate agent was telling him that it would be very suitable for his business, and she was very anxious to let him have a look at it, and she was very anxious to arrange a viewing. But the bottom line is, this fellow wasn't actually sure what he was getting for the purchase price. So let's say, as I say, the purchase price is 100,000. He wasn't sure whether he was getting a lease or getting a freehold interest, a freehold unit, or simply buying a lease and buying into an obligation to pay rent for a certain period of time. So I had a look at it. Some of the questions that he was asking, for me, I take for granted the answers to them because I'm at this involvement or engagement in shop units and so on since December 1986. But as I say, it's not fair, I suppose, when I think about it, to assume that other people will understand even basic concepts. So just to be clear, let me just change this video here, or change the angle of this. Just to be absolutely clear, if you're buying a shop unit and it's 100,000, say, or 200,000 or 50,000, you need to be clear whether you're getting a freehold interest or a leasehold interest. As it happens, in this particular case, the 100 grand was going to buy a leasehold interest. The existing lease had 9 years to run. I don't know any more about the lease other than that it had 9 years to run. So it could have been originally a 5 or a 10-year lease, it could have been a 35-year lease, 15, 20 years or whatever. Bottom line is it had 9 years to run. So just to be clear, this chap was being asked to pay 100,000 for the leasehold interest in this property. That obliged him to pay rent, and it obliged him to pay rates and so on and so forth, and stick with or adhere to the other terms and conditions of the lease. But the first thing that you need to be clear about is that it was a leasehold interest and he was being asked to pay 100 grand for the lease. The second thing you need to be clear about is what would happen at the end of the 9 years if there's only 9 years to run. That depends. In the ordinary course of events, you would have a legal entitlement pursuant to the Landlord and Tenant Act 1980 and a later amended act to a new lease. However, if the existing lessee, for example, had signed a deed of renunciation, in other words, they renounced their right to a new lease at the end of or the expiry of the existing lease, then no new lease would be on the cards. So that's something that would have to be investigated in the course of the solicitor doing the work for the purchaser of that shop unit. But I wanted just to be clear that the shop unit could have been leasehold, it could have been freehold, and this chap wasn't actually sure what it was. It was leasehold, the rent was hairy enough, there was rates then obviously as well, and there's only 9 years to go on the lease. So there's a doubt over getting a new lease. There may be a legal entitlement to get a new lease, however there may not be if, as I say, the existing lessee signed a deed of renunciation at the outset when they were taking on the lease. These are the sort of things that I take for granted, but I know it's not fair to assume that other people know these things, and that's why I'm just making this video. It just crossed my mind, as I say, that there's a lot of stuff there that a person might take for granted that other people know when that's not true at all. And the questions that chap was asking appeared to me to be dumb questions, stupid questions, but when I think about it more fully, they weren't dumb questions. They were simply sensible questions which required an answer, and he didn't have the answer, which is fair enough because he's not from Ireland, he's from outside Ireland, and he's a professional man. He's not involved in retail or in leases or freeholds or anything else. So hope you find this video useful, and I hope you might give it a thumbs up down below. Any comments you have about leaseholds or freeholds, commercial units, retail, etc., leave them down below, and if you have any questions I'll try and answer them as well. Thanks a lot.